Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Loving Out Loud, the video class based on the book of the same name, Loving Out Loud, Learning to Love in a Hate-Filled World. You've reached chapter 8, titled Ernest, Hand-Me-Downs to the Rescue. Welcome. Our theme scripture today is from Matthew 25, verses 34 to 40. And I want you, as we read it, I want you to try to notice what's not there. One of the key things to learn when you're trying to learn to draw or learn to paint, or I've even heard even interior decoration, is to see the negative space. And the negative space is to see what's not present. So I want to encourage you to think about that as we read through this passage. Matthew 25, 34 to 40. It says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?' The king will reply, 'Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" Matthew 25, 34 to 40. Now this passage, there's a whole second segment. Basically, all of the world is gathered before him, and he puts the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. This is the imagery that we've come to believe it represents the end of times, the final judgment, the sheep and the goats, the story of the sheep and the goats. And as a Christian, I think this passage should give us pause, especially modern Christians who live in the United States today. I think it should give us a pause. I think we should maybe get a little uncomfortable in our pews, because all the things that we fuss and fight about are not in this passage. Remember, I suggested that we consider what's not there. There's nothing in Matthew 25 about worship styles. There's nothing in there about baptisms. There's nothing in Matthew 25 about whether or not we're traditional worship or progressive worship. There's nothing in Matthew 25 about our political views. There's nothing in there about our organizational structure, what we call our pastors or preachers, what we call our leadership. There's nothing in there about gender roles, what women are allowed to do or what they shouldn't be allowed to do. None of that is in there. The point is that Jesus is making is that in the end, it all comes down to how we love one another in real, tangible ways. Ways that you can put your finger on, you can touch, you can experience. It comes down to how we love one another. Doctrine, however, as important as it is, and I'm not saying that it's not important, doctrine, however, is never mentioned in this passage. The grand scheme of things, the bottom line, is how do we love one another? Something to think about. Now, over the last few weeks, you've come to know quite a bit about me, and you'll learn a lot more about me in the coming weeks. But one thing that I want to share in this particular episode is that, I wore a lot of polyester as a kid. You see, my mom got me new school clothes every year, and in her mind, new school clothes needed to be kind of dress clothes. And, we couldn't afford the really nice dress clothes, so the closest thing we got was a lot of polyester. So I wore a lot of polyester clothes in elementary and middle school. Um, every fall, about a week before school would start, we would go not Christmas shopping, we would go new clothes shopping for school. And, J.C. Penney, Sears, there was this one little shop on the west side of Muncie that we would generally go to, and I got a lot of polyester. I never wore jeans to school until I was in high school, and I typically had some sort of fake brown leather shoes or boots. Those were my school clothes. I had tennis shoes, and I would take my tennis shoes so that I could change for gym, but my actual school shoes were these kind of faux leather boots. And so this was my life as a kid. I didn't have hand-me-downs. When I was born, my closest sibling had turned 16 about 2 weeks before. So by the time I was coming up into school, they were long gone, and whatever clothes they had were long gone. So typically, I didn't get hand-me-downs. I got new school clothes every year, but they were polyester, and all the other kids were wearing blue jeans and t-shirts and all the other stuff. But no, my life was a polyester world. Polyester to the rescue. Now, by the time I got in high school, I started things started changing. I begged my mother to let me wear clothes like all the other kids. I started wearing jeans and t-shirts, and I had Converse tennis shoes, usually high top leather Converses, and I started dressing a little bit more normally, and I got a typical wardrobe. Um, when I got out of high school, I went to Bible college. I think I'd mentioned that before. So a couple years of Bible college in West Virginia. Then I came back to Muncie. I met the woman who would become my wife. And a few years later, about 1985, I decided to move to South Carolina. And Nancy and I moved to Columbia so that I could be a ministry intern. I was going to be a self-supported ministry intern at a church in Columbia, South Carolina, which basically meant the church wasn't paying me. And the income I had came from a handful of friends and sponsors who would monthly send me some money. It wasn't much, a few $100s at most. And then we had my wife's salary as a church secretary. So basically, our money was on a shoestring. Eventually, I got a $100 a month stipend to manage the janitorial staff at the church building. But we had a very tight financial shoestring. There wasn't much there on a regular basis, and it was not unusual for us to get really close to being desperate when I would go to the mailbox and find a check for $25 or $50 or $100, and we got pulled out of the drowning position a few times. Now we lived in an apartment on, I guess it was kind of on the southeast side of Columbia, and our breezeway had 8 apartments, and all 8 of us shared one common laundry room. That laundry room had 2 washers and 2 dryers, and typically what we would do is we would carry our clothes down and we'd wash it. We leave it in the washer and then come down later, flip it over to the dryer, again leave it, come back, get it. And so a lot of dead space there where nobody's watching it. We're just using the laundry machine. And my wife had washed some of it was my dark clothes, because I had 2 kinds of clothes, white and everything else. So my everything else was in the dryer. And I went down to get it, and it was gone. All of it. Pretty much all of my clothes that weren't white, which meant all I had left was t-shirts and underwear. I had a handful of things. What I was wearing at the time was just about it. There was maybe a couple other things, but most of my clothes were gone. I lost nearly everything. And remember, we're on a financial shoestring. There's no money in the budget for me to go shopping. At that point in time, we didn't use credit cards. Um, and yes, they did exist. I'm not that old, but I did not use them. And I had no money in the bank to go buy clothes. I don't know what I was going to do. I guess I would have reached out to my parents to see if they could send me a little bit of money so I could go get a couple of new shirts and a couple of new pairs of pants. But I really didn't know what to do. And I'd probably shared that with a couple of people that what had happened to us. And so the following Sunday, I am at church and up walks Ernest. The thing you got to know about Ernest is that he and I were roughly the same size, roughly the same age, um, but we were in different regions of the church. We knew each other, but we weren't tight. We didn't hang out. I would consider him a friend, but it's not like we were best buddies. But he heard about my problem. He heard about what had happened to me. And he didn't come up and ask me a bunch of questions. He didn't ask me what was in my bank account. He didn't ask me if I had a plan. He just walked up with a bag full of agape love. Basically, he walked up with a big, I think it was probably a shopping bag, full of clothes. Clothes that were my size. And they weren't threadbare. They weren't holy. Gave them to me in church, but they weren't holy clothes. They were intact and they were in good shape and they were nice. He had gone to his closet and pulled out a whole bunch of clothes so that I could have something to wear. He met my need and took care of me in my hour of need. He saw that I needed clothed, and he clothed me. Just like that Matthew 25 passage. So, here's what I want you to think about. Here's what I want you to discuss as we go forward. You know, Ernest went out of his way to meet my need. He loved me in a tangible way. There were other people who commiserated with me. Oh man, I'm really sorry that happened to you. Oh, did they catch who did it? Oh, that's terrible. That's awful. What are you going to do? There were plenty of people who did that. You know what? I don't remember any of them. I don't remember who said what. I don't remember who commiserated with me. I don't remember anything except Ernest, because Ernest changed the direction of the situation by giving me something real, something I needed at that point in time. So here's your discussion questions. When you boil it all down, what is the bottom line of Jesus' story of the sheep and the goats? Read the full passage again. Go back to Matthew 25, 31 to 46, and read it in your discussion group. Discuss it among yourselves. What is the bottom line of that? Remember, look for what's not there. What is there and what's not there? The second one is, why do we put so much energy into having the right doctrine and so little energy into meeting real, tangible needs? This is something I've got to work on. As I move forward in my life, I'm looking for ways that I can apply myself into ministry situations where I can meet real needs. I encourage you to do the same. Number 3, share about a time when someone truly met a need in your life. When they reached out, saw a problem or a need that you had, and they met it. Okay, next one. Thinking about the poor, the hungry, the sick, the imprisoned. What are specific needs that you see right now in your community? And the last one is, what role does fear play in meeting needs? how can you overcome it? Now, here's where I'm coming from with that question. There are times when we see people who are in obvious need, and sometimes there is fear that comes up. Well, what if I stop and I engage with them? What will they do? How will they act? Will they attack me? Will they be will they ask more than I can supply? Will they, will they misuse what I give them? What role does fear play in meeting needs? And how can you overcome it? Okay, that's the last of the discussion questions. Now, are you ready for your challenge? Because here you go. The weekly challenge this week is open your eyes to the needs around you this week. Identify a need that you can meet in someone else's life by giving them something you already have. Now you could say, well, I already have this $5 bill. Well, that's true. That's good enough. That works. But is there a way that you can meet a need by sacrificing a possession? Is there something somebody needs that you have that you can give them to meet a need? Can you clothe someone who needs clothed from your own clothes? I don't know about you, but I have a pretty significant closet these days. I don't have the problem I had back in 1986 when I lived in Columbia, South Carolina. So yeah, I could share some shirts. I could share a couple of pairs of pants if that were the needs that I see. Are you in the same boat? Do you have some needs that you can meet by sharing possessions? That's your challenge this week. Give it a go. I wish there was a way we could get feedback on this. It'd be cool if you tried some of these challenges and then somehow messaged me. You're welcome to do that. I can be reached at Michael at authormichaeldecamp.com. All right, next week, the topic is Angela, the great soda can debacle. We're back to one of my less than stellar moments next week. Hope you join me. Thanks.